All right. We are back. I appreciate you all being here. And again, this is Politically Correcting on the We the People Podcast Network. I've got myself here, Jose Pio. I've got my best friend and podcast, Mr. Austin over there.
Hello.
The ones and twos. I appreciate you guys being here again, as always, and spending your time with me again. Your time is valuable, and you're here with me right now. Whether at 4 o'clock on Monday live or you're watching the replay, it does not matter as long as you are spending time with me. And again, what we do here on the Politically Correcting Podcast is we talk about things that we as Americans have conversations with our friends. And me, myself, I like to have it over a drink. So let's crack it open. All you out there, Austin, you as well, without breaking the nail. There's our drink.
Cheers.
Cheers. I think I grabbed the shaken one. There was one that fell. I swore that I put it away, but I guess I didn't. But okay. All right. Today, I want to start again with something personal. I like to talk about personal items first, and then besides dripping on the microphone here, you can bill me for that later on.
Yeah, that's what those little fuzzy covers are for, right?
I thought it was for COVID protection.
Oh, no. It's for your drink overflowing, obviously.
All right. So I want to talk about something personal. This past week we had a death in the family, and I take things a little differently from a lot of other folks. I don't want to say I'm not really good with death. I'm just different with it. I like to celebrate the life of someone, while other people, they go through the mourning. However people mourn is how they mourn. So this is not against anybody in specifically, but for any of the family members out there with children, and this is a tough thing. You want to protect your children from the negatives in this world, but there are so many negatives in this world. So I want to say let's do something different. Let's expose our children to strength. Let's expose them to strength, not protection. Protecting our kids from chaos and difficulties will not set them up for later in life, because we know what happens later in life. We know what happens in the real world, right? The dangers out there, the negativity out there. Protecting them when they're younger will not set them up for later in life, but rather make them weak and dependent and subjugated. They'll turn subjugated to the higher powers out there that will make them feel that they are strong when really they are searching for that protection that we may have been giving them earlier in life. The world is not safe. Even in the Bible, in Genesis, it talks about the snake getting into the garden. Even when God is watching, even when God was watching, we were not safe from the snake entering the Garden of Eden. So arm our kids with the ability to defend themselves against the introduction of chaos, right? Chaos is crazy out there. Our world is chaotic. And we have a tough time right now with dealing with it. I feel like there's a lot of people right now that are going to be dealing with some, I don't want to diminish the effects of anything that our military veterans are going through with their mental health. But man, this past year and a half, almost 2 years, has been just overwhelming, right? Overwhelming to a lot of people. But it's funny because I went to my son's graduation, and they had their own video clips where they talked about the one thing they learned in the past year with doing online learning and with doing it over the computer and such. And what he said, I took, personally, I loved it. I guess some people may have taken it, a little differently. But what he said was that the number one thing he remembered and what he learned throughout the school year was his parents saying, just do it, right? Not the Nike. I don't want to steal the Nike, the quote there, but what we're talking about and what we talk about in our house is not having excuses, right? Don't have excuses. Don't give me excuses. There's certain responsibilities that you have that you must do, right? And as grownups, we know that. We know that you have to get it done no matter what. Doesn't matter what your excuse is. It needs to get done. So him saying that was his number one thing that he remembered all year was just do it. That wasn't us about telling him what to do. But really it was forcing him to listen, right? It was about him doing or forcing him to listen. It was really about him doing what was necessary, even when he didn't want to. So remember that as grown-ups, we have to do the same thing. There's many things that we do that we may not like. Sometimes it's our job. Sometimes it's just our responsibility, but just do it. And if you listen to Dan Pena out there, I would love to have him on the podcast as well. He adds the F in the word in the middle of it. It's fantastic. But anyways, let's get off the personal stuff here. Let's talk about some things that we discussed last week on my show, as well as around the world, because this is a worldwide show. And I appreciate all you guys again for being out there and listening to this. But last week I spoke with guest Shannon Joy. If you missed that, you missed a really good one. If you're really looking for information about the COVID and vaccinations and such, she is a plethora of information, and she's a spitfire. She's amazing. Big shout out to Shannon Joy out there for coming on the show. You were awesome. I really appreciate it. But we talked about vaccines and government control, right? And lo and behold, Sydney, Australia. Let's pull up that article there. And yeah, I got White Claw. I drink some White Claw. It's a good summer drink. I also drink, I've been into sours lately. If anyone likes those sours, the tartar, the better. The more purple they are, the better. Oh man, they're great. We got the Australia one. Sydney police fine hundreds of anti-lockdown protesters for, I got the private chat in the way there. For what kind of behavior? Filthy, risky behavior. You filthy, risky Australians. You dirty animals. So what they're not telling you though, and this is something I had also talked about, how a lot of the news that I hear about is from social media. The lockdown, they went on lockdown because of 3 deaths, right? 3 deaths during lockdown that they locked down the entire country for. The ages of those that died, one was 70, one was 80, and one was 90. That's insane, right? That's an entire lockdown of an entire country because of 3 people, all 3 of them which were over 70 years old. That's crazy. Now you see them protesting, right? You see the anti-lockdown protesters. It sounds like my guest is coming in now. Everyone's excited for Sheriff Baxter, but let's not forget, I got a show to run here. We got another one, which Austin had to step out there. We also had France. France, if you haven't seen France in the news lately, they are in droves out there protesting. We're talking like 160,000 people. 160,000 people that are out there protesting in France. But not just that. Not only were they protesting, but 2 days later, they passed a law for the COVID vaccine passports, mandating that you either have to have the vaccine or you have to prove that you had COVID and overcame it in the last like 14 days. That's crazy. That's. But the funny thing is, people equate other countries to America. We have these rights here in our country that we take for granted. These other countries, I have no idea if they have the right to protest. I have no idea if they have the right to be out in public after 10 p.m. or to be protesting the government or be saying bad things about them. I don't know what the laws are over there. I have no idea. But we here in America, we have those rights, which is fantastic. We take them for granted. But this past weekend on Saturday, there was a protest on the American-Canadian border as well. I forget, it was a few thousand people, I think, that showed up for that one, right on the Rainbow Bridge, because Canada has been locked down for, oh my God, I don't even know how long. If you haven't been noticing what's happening all around the world with these lockdowns, it's scary because at this point now, if you haven't read, there's actually been more deaths after the vaccinations recently than there are deaths for people that aren't vaccinated. How crazy is that? My guest is here, but I got a couple of things I'm still going through here. I'm gonna keep going. China is also, they have rejected the plan for the WHO to come out there and investigate whether or not the COVID was potentially released from the Wuhan lab. You know, a lot of people have been talking about it. It's come up that it's a possibility, and you know, China is saying no, we're not even going to allow them to come in here and check to see if that was a possibility. That's crazy. That is crazy. We got our esteemed guy, and he's in his full regalia, so you're not gonna have a drink with us here, Todd. There we go. I do have one article, the Maricopa County one, that is going to tie us in with Sheriff Baxter here. This is good news, though, right? That we've been missing in this world. Some good news. Got the Maricopa County one that's going to pop up here. It's going to be the sheriffs out there that one. The deputies escort daughter of fallen officer to first day of kindergarten. We're talking about a kindergartner who lost her dad. Her dad was a one of the we call those. He was a jail deputy, and he had mental health issues from being in the military. He ended up just he went and did some crazy stuff, and unfortunately, the deputies had to get involved. And they had so much respect for this guy. They didn't want to do what they had to do. Unfortunately, they told the family, "Hey, look, we're going to be here for you. Whatever the daughter needs, whatever you guys need, let us know," because they know what it's like, right? And I know Sheriff Todd Baxter here knows what it's like to have brothers and sisters in the military that may be going through their own mental health issues, and hopefully he doesn't. But unfortunately, that comes with the territory of being in the military. And absolutely. I appreciate your service, Todd, Sheriff Baxter, sorry. And thank you for being on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. This is great. Sad note that we're coming in on, but you're absolutely right. Dealing with the stresses of jobs, whether it's law enforcement or the military, it's real. So
talk to me about I haven't actually sat down and spoke with you about, I've known Sheriff Baxter for quite some time now with my work when you were at the Veterans Outreach Center.
Correct.
Were you CEO over there?
I was Executive Director of Veterans Outreach Center. Yep.
And you killed it over there. They loved you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm sure they miss you, but they're doing really well now as well.
Amen.
Nothing against the person that's there. It's just, Sheriff Baxter has such a demeanor about him. He's glorious.
He's glorious.
Glorious. Look at the halo around him.
Mary, are you listening, Mary? It's my wife.
That's right. You can say the same thing. Edna, are you listening to? But no, I appreciate your service. And talk to me about your time in the military. Like, what branch were you in? When were you in? And talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I went in the Army full-time, active duty for 3 years in 1983, believe it or not. So I'm dating myself a bit. United States Army Military Police Corps. Spent a year in Korea at 18 years old. I highly recommend it. And then 2 years at Fort Leavenworth on the good side of the wall. I was a road patrol military police officer at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas for 2 years. And then spent 19 additional years in the Army Reserve program here, mostly around the Western New York area, but activated a couple times with stateside, both those activations. And I like to say the military gave me a lot. I left high school. I went to a city school here in Rochester, Jefferson High School. Didn't have much direction, but thank God for the military, my wife, God, and I've ended up with a great career out of those three things.
That's fantastic to hear. And we actually have the connection there, obviously Army. Which I believe Dan Rice, one of my faithful followers here, I believe he was Army. But why did you join the military? You said you graduated from City School District here in Rochester, Jefferson High School. What made you join?
I really had no sense of direction. A lot of people would be surprised. I think I just barely graduated high school. It was June of my graduating year before I actually knew I was getting out. Not a lot of sense of direction, though. My father had served just post Korea, and I always looked up to the military. Always had a calling. But with no clear future after high school, I went down in February of my graduation year, signed up with the early entry program, the delayed entry program, and I chose military police officer not because I wanted to be a cop, just because I thought that was interesting in the recruiter handbook, something I could do. And with that, I grabbed a career that I absolutely loved. From 1983 to today, I've been doing law enforcement since.
That's fantastic. We actually have a couple connections there. I joined right after high school. I actually didn't even tell my parents. Really? That I was joining. I didn't tell them I was taking a test or anything. Yeah. Literally, I joined. I took the test. Killed it. I got an awesome score on it, and they gave me, you could be an MP, right? Military police officer. I was like, that's not what I like. I'm not a police officer. That's not for me. Right. I was like, and I already had looked up what professions there were, and signals intel and military intelligence was automatic for me. I was like, why? I want this. They're like, well, you get a better bonus if you go this route. Right, they're pushing you towards MP or 11 bang bang 11 Bravo out there. But I was also stationed in Korea. How was it when you were there? Because I absolutely hated it. I mean, I hated because my base was, where were we? But it was Camp Humphreys, a little more south. We had the pig farm right outside of where we would run our 2 miles every day. Yeah. Oh my God, it was the worst. So how was it when you were there?
So I was down in Taegu, a little further south than you, but I was there in 83 or 84 to 85. It was still a unique environment. I remember, I was a military police officer standing guard at a gate for Camp Henry. and the sirens go off, the air raid sirens, and
Well.
read the SOP right before you start your duty. And it says, close up gates and take fighting positions.
That's right.
It's me as an 18-year-old military police officer, my 45 caliber handgun saying, what happens next? There was no, what happens next. But it was an exciting time. The Korean people absolutely loved us.
They did.
They we're thankful we were there. They fed us. They housed us. They did everything they could for us to, and appreciated what we were providing as service members. And I hope we did the same thing in return. It's a great culture, great food, great people. And but I can never say it was a bad assignment, even though they called it a hardship tour. At 18, you don't really realize what hardship is. There's no cell phones back then. You called home twice. Literally, I talked to my mother twice in a year. But
I don't think about that.
I loved it. We got there, and I'm sure you guys counted down 365, 364.
Oh, yeah.
You had your calendar checked off every day. But once you leave, then you look back and you go, that was great. What are you talking about?
Well, the worst part was that I was in Korea when 9/11 hit.
Oh, really?
So I was there when some of my buddies were like leaving. They were leaving out of Korea, and they got stop lost. So once you hit that 365 days, I'm out of here. Boom, 9/11 hits. I don't mean to use that word, sorry, boom, but dang, 9/11 hits and stop loss for another year. Wow. And all the people that thought they're going back home to their families and friends, jobs, everything. Yeah. And you're right, you're not prepared. Like, you can read all you want, you can have these plans, and God laughs at plans, right?
Yeah. Because it's not his plans.
Right, exactly. So once 9/11 hit, and we were in full NBC gear every single day. And if you remember how hot Korea got,
sure.
Oh man, I lost a good amount of weight. The only thing I did for the 6 months that you were stuck on post, and if you know about being stuck on post, there's nothing but to work out.
Right.
And that's all I did. I worked out. I ordered protein, and I ordered just workout magazines. Oh my God, I was pure 145 muscle. Yeah. Stupid, ridiculous. I came home. I thought I was the bee's knees.
Right.
But that was the good part, was that in Korea, you could drink when you're 18.
Yeah.
And that was ridiculous. Actually, my entire Army career, because I was in Korea for my first year. And then I went to Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, which is one of the last remaining forts at that time where they had an on-post club, NCO club.
Oh, really?
Where you can drink when you're 18 and over as well. So the entire time I was in the military, I was surrounded by people drinking the entire time. So, I when I got out of the military and went to college, I was fully prepared for that.
Yeah, you weren't that 18-year-old rookie out there drinking.
No.
I put 2 boys in college, and I always say it's much safer to put them in the Army than freshman year at college. That's scary stuff.
I agree. There's some bad people in college.
Oh yeah, and the drinking and the lack of good decision making. Right. In the military, you were responsible to someone, right? You had a sergeant, or you had somebody you had to report to the next day. You couldn't.
We don't think about that.
College is a free for all.
Exactly. You don't think about the responsibilities involved. When you're looking at, when I went to college, I was 23, 22 at the time. Yeah. And I'm there with, 18-year-olds who are just finally leaving their parents' home, who don't know how to act, who don't know how to do anything really. And I'm sitting there like, I was with my battle buddy the whole time. And now I'm going to college by myself. And I was like, I need to join a fraternity. So I joined a fraternity.
You join one?
I did. It was a military. I was a more military-based fraternity.
I didn't know there was one. That's cool.
It's Pi Kappa Phi. Shout out to them. It was funny because I saw someone from high school walking down, across the college campus. So I stopped and said, "Hey, how's it going?" Blah blah blah. And she just looked at me. She's like, "You were in the military, weren't you?" I was like, "Yeah." How you know? She's like, "The haircut. You can't miss the haircut." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "You should go talk to Pi Kappa Phi." I was like, "Why?" She's like, "Just go talk to them."
Really?
And literally the first day I met them was like 5 prior Army guys. The rest of them are in ROTC.
Everybody grunted. You knew you were at home.
Yeah, I loved it. It was fantastic. So you were in military for a full 20 years or 20 plus years?
22, yeah.
22 years. And then did you go straight into the police force, or did you have some time with the...
So I did 3 active duties. So when I came off and went into the reserve program, I was going to MCC using my GI Bill and, studying criminal justice.
You did the right thing.
Yeah, amen. And then on my first test for the Rochester Police Department, I scored 100, which I always say my career is a godsend. It truly is. I could take that test another 1,000 times and not score 100
Never had
an exam. But so I was destined to be a police officer in the city of Rochester. So I did that concurrently with my reserve duty, and I spent 22 years at the Rochester Police Department.
There you go.
Leaving as a captain. Yeah, so it's been a great career. So it's been phenomenal.
Now, did you have anyone in RPD, that Rochester Police Department, that kind of mentored you? Now, how was that effective for the rest of your career there?
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of law enforcement and military, you know, they have, you know, family members that guide them towards that. I had no one. You know, my father worked at General Motors. My mother drove a school bus in the city for a city school district for years.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, exactly. She went to the hospital twice. She's got more Purple Hearts for driving a school bus than I have for being a cop for all these years.
Was it because of the road or because of the kids?
No, kids. Yeah. Once she got her nose broke by a student driving. And then one day she was driving down, I think it was Jeff or Genesee Street, and kids were throwing Frisbees across the street over the school bus, and one went through her window. So she took the Frisbee and kept on driving. The next day she stopped at a bus stop close to it. The kid comes on, wants her Frisbee. She doesn't have it, and you know, it gets popped in the nose.
Oh my God.
And broke her nose.
You think the kids are crazy these days?
Oh yeah. My mother had a broken nose and glass in the eye from 2 different incidents on school district. So she was a hardcore woman that
she was
worked for minimum wage, you know, so those aren't the best jobs in the world for the anger management you have to go through. But so, yeah, it's been the whole career has been an absolute godsend, and this whole opportunity to serve other people is an amazing opportunity. You know, so the Rochester Police Department, you know, 4 years with the town of Greece Police Department, unique environment out there. It was a police department going through a lot of issues. Yeah. 5 cops being arrested. And then, as you said, Veterans Outreach Center, now sheriff. I mean, this is a career you can't predict.
No one could predict that. That's actually kind of when I met you, was when you had left the Greece department, went to the Veterans Outreach Center. How did that take place? How did you leave the, you know, police force to go into the nonprofit sector, and how different of a lifestyle is that?
180 degrees different, but you know, leadership is leadership. You know, it doesn't matter where you're going and doing you're leading people, right? And they all have their needs and wants, and you have objectives and strategic plans. But you know, to leave since 18 years old, military, and then police work, paramilitary. You always have that command and control. You have that structure where you go to a nonprofit, you know, you can't tell people just jump and they say, oh, hi.
Right.
There's a lot of like whys, and, you know, I don't feel like doing that today, or, you know, I'm not comfortable with this. And so it took that leadership style adjustment, but I learned so much running a nonprofit. First of all, you had to raise your own funds. Yeah. So you had people who had to believe in you. Taxpayers weren't paying all your salaries and all your budget considerations. You had to raise the money and get trust. So that was unique. And then you're doing a mission that the government couldn't fulfill. That's why there's nonprofits. You know, good nonprofits exist because the government can't fulfill that need. And that's exactly what the Veterans Outreach Center did. We weren't anti-VA. As a matter of fact, we loved the VA. The VA had 2 seats in our office, right? But the fact is, local nonprofits can fill gaps that government can't fill much better and much more efficient sometimes. So that's what the Veterans Outreach Center tried to do, you know, just fill that gap for the VA. And nothing because they're bad. It's just because they're a huge federal bureaucracy that doesn't know what's going on. Can
you say that a little bit louder out there for people that think the government can fix everything? And change everything?
The government can't solve all problems, and neither can law enforcement or anybody else. Right. You know, there's no perfect government entity. And when we rely on government to solve all the problems, we really got issues, because it's not showing that self-reliance that we all need. But local nonprofits have a position. And what I learned a lot in the nonprofit world was what motivated me to run for sheriff. It really was, because I looked at the veterans that it was living in my homeless shelter. I looked at the addicted veterans, the veterans suffering from post-traumatic, and a lot of them were coming out of jail, you know, but we were stabilizing and letting them live with us for up to 2 years and working on those habits that might've got them in jail. And I said, man, can you imagine if you could do this with the whole jail population, you know, work on their habits and work on their life skills, and maybe, you know, help, you know, other people besides just veterans. That's the first thing that really got me thinking about running for sheriff, is the jail.
So, okay. So you had the police, you know, you went from, you know, being in the military to being in the police force, which was there much of a mental change at that point? But people believe that, you know, once you're going from military to police, it's like a pretty easy course there. Is that similar mentality there, or is it completely different? What are your thoughts? It's
similar from the standpoint of like the basic training in the academy. You know, there's marching, there's esprit de corps, there's a military type drill and ceremony, there's the chain of command.
That chain of command is huge.
Yeah, everything we're used to.
Oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I've in the private world, when a manager would tell me, hey, you know, you don't have to come. You can just want to. I'm like, no, I would never. Like, I would never. You're my manager. I will always come to you.
And that's what makes veterans great employees, right there. It's like, no, I know no different. I'm not going to do it. You're my boss.
I can't believe how. I would think that any company would want to hire a military veteran, because man, we are trained to take orders and just do and not double think of it. And it's just, don't talk back. It's just go.
Yeah, and work ethic, you know, and there's 2 things I always want. I tell my recruiters, bring me 2 things, I'll train them as a cop. Bring me work ethic and character, right? Those are the 2 things I can train you if you're halfway intelligent, but I can't train you on work ethic. Either you got it or you don't. And the military does a great job instilling it in people and character. I mean, we added a whole week to basic training just about a decade ago, just to work on character and ethos, right, and values, because it's so important to a military operation, let alone life skills. So those two things are, if you're hiring a veteran, you're getting those two things most often. You're getting work ethic and character. You know that.
So when you ran for politics, for your position as sheriff, what was that? Crazy? Yeah. So how was that? Because it's not just a dynamic of you personally, but then you got the family that is also impacted by it.
Right.
So talk to me about the family dynamics when you were running after you had won your seat. But what was the conversation like with the family before you ran, and how was it during the actual campaigning?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And you know it because you've campaigned. You're 100% vulnerable during a campaign. All's fair. There's so many times during my campaign, I'd say the other side wouldn't do that. They'll never do that. They would never say it. And then you see a commercial with that, whatever that is, like, holy crap, they did it.
And they paid that much money to say it.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. And that's just campaigning. That's just politics 101. But your question is profound, because if you get into this because your ego or you want power, you're gonna be miserable, right? Mm-hmm. And if you get into it and your family's not 100% committed, you're going to be miserable because you're going through a system that people are going to critique and yell and scream at you, and you got to have some thick skin. But all of a sudden your kids are involved in it, right? And your wife or your spouse or your husband,
they get brought into it.
Yeah,
doesn't matter if they want to or not.
And if they're committed to you, and my wife is 100% committed to my career. She's in. She actually became the campaign manager.
Good for her.
I mean, she evolved into it.
And she's and
she's in it. And the fact that she was brilliant at it, and because that's how the campaign evolved. But the point I'm making is when you start exposing yourself like that, then you can't be offended when someone starts calling her a bad name, right? Of course you get offended, it's your wife, but we're in it together. And man, you got to have that. If you get into politics without the approval of your family, you're going to be miserable, because they're all in whether they like it or not.
Yeah, we've seen it locally, unfortunately, with family members that weren't all in it to back and support their other family members. So that's a terrible thing. So shout out to anyone out there who's even thinking about getting into politics.
Say that again, man. I applaud people that are willing to take that risk.
Man, it is a tough industry to get into, because you would, when they say, what is it? They say politics doesn't make good friends or something. There's no friends in politics.
Yeah.
Something. Oh my God, is that true? You would think the people that were, supportive during this time, you say one thing that they're not supportive of, and then somehow they're not supporting you anymore. Okay, well, were you really supporting at that time? Or were you just, supporting that one issue that you agreed with? And now, so it's unfortunate. Have you lost friends being in a position you are, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I lost friends when I decided to run for office, and we were very clear in our family, again, that maybe they weren't our friends.
Right.
Maybe we put a lot of time and energy into people that might've been using us, or maybe we've been using them, but were they truly what we call friends? And so it kind of cleaned house. That's how I looked at it. Kind of
makes it easy.
Yeah, it kind of cleaned house, and found out who your true friends were. And don't forget, I switched parties, right?
Yep.
And with that, a lot of my friends from the other party, the party that I left, were offended by that. That's natural. I'm not mad at they're offended by that. And I'm not mad they're loyal to anybody or any party. That's the way they should be. But the fact is, before all this, you and I had this thing called friend. We had a beer in my garage together, right? So what happened to that? And you can still maintain loyalty to your party and everything, and even say you disagree with some of the things I'm thinking about doing. But but the fact that people turned you off, I was like, at the end of the day, it just cleaned house. It cleaned house from who you're going to put your time and energy into.
Absolutely.
As a friend.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons for this podcast. Politically correcting is, for me, it's all about, doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat.
Oh, no.
It is the person, right? It always comes down to the person. And I've always looked up to you as being that one person that can cross both lines and say, look, it doesn't matter if he is, was Republican, is now Democrat. Doesn't matter at this point. He is who he is. And if you support, you support. And one of the things that I really support is the fact that you were starting up a program for people who are getting out of jail, right? And then COVID hit. So what are we coming to look at for that? What are you going to do with that? And what is it about for all those who actually don't know what this program is about? For those getting out of jail, speak to them, and hopefully you'll earn some more supporters out there.
Yeah, Star Academy. It was an idea. I spoke about the Veterans Outreach Center and what motivated me to run, and it was changing people's lives. That you have a great opportunity in life to do that. No one has that. A lot of people don't have that job description. So I thought about the Monroe County Jail and what we were doing at the Veterans Outreach Center with people that were struggling. and we're housing them for up to 2 years, and we're getting them the supportive mechanisms, but really we're forcing them to toe the line and reestablish habits that were positive habits in their lives. And you could do that in a jail because you have them in custody, right? You can do positive things. So people that want to change, there's 800 people in the jail today. 700 may never want to change their habits, right? That's okay. 100 that really want to change their life, are we providing everything we can in that? So the Star Academy was developed and designed based on a lot of research. And it says if we could take a group of guys, and it'll be female someday if we COVID goes away, and put them in a cohort model and let them live together for 6 months and work on them intensely every day from 05:30, they're up. These are inmates up doing physical fitness training together.
I remember those days.
Right? They're doing PT together.
Right.
They're having breakfast, but here's the key. They're having breakfast with the jail deputy.
Yeah.
Right? They're sitting down breaking bread with it, because it's not an us versus them. We have rules. I'm the jail guard.
Right.
You got to follow my orders, but also we don't have to be so much us versus them and just turn the key and lock you away. And these inmates that go into this program volunteered to do this, right? They're sentenced inmates that volunteer.
Which is the best way to do it.
Because they're going to work. They're going to provide sweat equity.
They're choosing to.
They're going to sweat, right? But with that, in return, we're giving them a nice place to live. It's still inside the Monroe County Jail, but it's a better part of the jail. I say we give them a nice pillow, so when they're having a bad day and they don't want to toe the line, you can go back downtown and live there and have the old pillow. Simple things. We give them maybe a little better meal once a week, right? But what we're doing is
slice their garlic with the
no slicing, nothing. We still don't give away knives. We're not that. But and then we give them 3 months of intense personal development. Are they in there for anger management? They in there for addiction? They in there for we teach them how to run a checkbook. M&T Bank gives them a bank account. Right? We teach them how to do the checkbook for maybe the first time in their life. And all those personal things. We work with their family, we work with their pastor, we bring those people into the jail.
That's awesome.
Right? And then the second 3 months is all about job training, job placement. They learn how to go out and figure out what square plumb is, if that's what they're interested in, right? They figure out how to pound a nail. And we take them out of the jail with ankle bracelets on, and they actually go work and earn a paycheck. Put that money in the M&T bank account. Plug in M&T right now, but it could be any bank that wants to help us out. And the idea is
anyone who wants to put some money into this,
and they start paying off maybe a couple of their fines. If they owe money on their vehicle and traffic law violations, they owe money to family courts, because those are all burdens. We do all this work with people that are incarcerated, and then we release them out to the public, the personalities, the places, and people to help get them in jail.
The exact same.
They did their crime, but help get them in jail. And maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of those burdens are off their backs, but they've also got a job lined up. No, they got a job they've been working at for the last month. They already know the boss, right? The boss has already yelled at them a couple times, right? But they've been on time every day because we've been transporting them there. But, they understand that the only thing that's changing when they leave is where they're laying their head, right? And we work on that. We've contracted with RIT to do a 2-year study of these folks, keep track of them for 2 years after incarceration. To see
that's huge.
Working. See what's not working.
Right.
And I'm bold enough to say some of these things are these great ideas I have won't work, but so let's study that and see what works, do more, what doesn't work, throw out. And so COVID kicked in the middle of that. Our first cohort did graduate, but they had to graduate from downtown. 2 guys left with their New York State driver's license. They were proud as peacocks because they left with that, something you and I consider, we don't even think about it. We just get in our car and drive because you're not worried about anything. But these guys have grown up maybe their whole life, never had one. That's a freedom provider. That's a burden off their back.
It's the little things you don't think about.
And here's the benefit. My progressive friends win. My conservative friends that paid the taxes. Right. My next victim of the crime, because we're not that good in law enforcement. They commit 5, 6, 10 crimes before we actually catch them and put them in custody. Right. So all those victims of future crimes are saving, their families are saving. Everybody's winning in this, so I can tell the story to progressives. I can tell the story to conservatives. It's all about the human soul. It's all about saving people.
I agree with that. And that's huge, because a lot of the problem is that they go right back to the same environment where they found themselves going to the bad side of, human nature and giving. And it's really not just about the job skills, in my opinion. It's a lot of it is giving men. And I talk about men because I feel like there's a big battle against men and having confidence these days as a man. Giving them the self-confidence to go out there and earn a living is huge for a lot of men who feel as though they have there's no reason for them to be confident about themselves because they were never raised that way. And so they then turn to what made them feel confident, which could be making money on the streets, fast money, or this piece on their side that is illegal that they got from their friend down the street. I really think self-confidence is a key for a lot of these repeat offenders, is helping them to show them that there's a whole nother life out there that they can do. It's just no one's ever showed them that they had that in them to do.
Yeah, and Maslow's 101, right? I mean, the hierarchy of needs is got to be fulfilled, or else it's these are principles, right? These are guidelines of life, and principles are, if you break one of the principles, things aren't going to work out as well. Maslow, says you need safety, security, then you'll get all to that self-esteem thing.
Right.
But if we can't fulfill those basic needs, that you feel like you're accomplishing something in life, you're producing something for someone else, let alone yourself. Those are good human skills.
Absolutely.
And Maslow talked about them 100 years ago, that, if we can provide these things.
They don't change. It doesn't change.
That's why they're called principles, right?
Right. So you did bring up something about COVID, and didn't New York State kind of like require you to release some people out of prison and not even allow them to get into a program like that? Like, what happened there?
Yeah. So we got a call on a Friday afternoon about, and don't forget, COVID was chaos, right? COVID was, we didn't know if we're all dying. I don't care what anybody says. Last April, we were preparing for the worst.
Right.
Whether you agreed with it or not, we were preparing for morgues. We were preparing for mass exit strategies, evacuating areas and things like that. And that's our job, to prepare for law enforcement and public safety. And with that, people are screaming at every sheriff in the world, get people out of your jail. It's a killing field. People are going to die in the jail, right? And they can't, and we did as much work as we could to keep people inside. Part of the job of a sheriff is safe and secure custody of inmates, right? Safe, right? So I got to keep them safe from everything, including COVID. But with that being said, there was a lot of debate on it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on a Friday afternoon, about 2:00, we get a call that here's a list of 50 people that are in your jail for parole, and they need to be out by midnight tonight.
Oh my God. I can't even, it's got to take a whole bunch of time to get someone released from jail as it is.
Yeah, it's usually a few day process,
right?
Because we want to release them appropriately. We don't want to just let them walk down South Plymouth Avenue, wander back into chaos, and end up back on the other side of the door. So we put a lot of time and effort in our process. What are their medical needs, right? Are they on prescription drugs? And they got to take a prescription with them. I mean, just simple things like that. Are they halfway through a treatment program? Are they working on?
Do they have a safe place to go? Like, did you just release? Were you forced to just release them, or you had to?
Absolutely, and that's where the story ends. It's a great idea. Okay, even if you agreed that, the jail is dangerous for them to be in because of COVID, and you want to release all the,
which makes no sense.
You want to release 50 parolees, but even if you agree with that, at least give us time to do our job, right? And that's maybe a proper transition. So we released 50 people by Sunday afternoon. This is on a Friday. By midnight, they have to be out. By Sunday, the phone was ringing off the hook. Complaints from constituents, and there are homeless people walking up and down my street asking for money. They weren't homeless on Friday. They were incarcerated. You might like that or not. I'm not even arguing that. But the fact is, we just released these guys with no plan of action. It wasn't good for them. It wasn't good for anybody. And
you can't get an ID at that time. Do you usually get a check when you leave?
There was no
prison?
Food. There was nothing at the other end. We barely handed them their property bag that they came in the jail with. And we sent them down to the Avenue, or we sent them down the Ridge Road, or we sent them down, we tried to give them drives. I mean, my staff wasn't equipped for this. Right. We have a whole unit that out processes people.
You turn into an Uber.
They all went home. It was Friday night, right?
Oh,
so my regular staff, not only trying to keep the jail safe and secure, now they're working in transition programs and even driving people. We literally tried to drive some people, inmates, at least door to door. If not, they're going to be wandering around homeless, which we had homeless inmates walking around on Sunday afternoon, and we're literally getting people to divide up food, make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and go feed the inmates that were released out of the one jail. It was this is what happens when government doesn't think it all the way through. And even if you want to release them, then allow the experts at the local level again to do their job. All right, we're going to release them. Give us the Monday then, if we have to.
Right.
And that's the funny part. No one understands that the sheriff has no control over who's inside the jail. If I did, I'd love that power, right? Because there's a few jerks that keep in there a long time, right? But they're placed in the care and custody of the Monroe County Sheriff, right? So they're placed in my custody. But we got to take that seriously. When you're going to release people out of jail, let's do it appropriately.
So isn't there something else coming on the line when someone turns 55? Are we releasing them as well? Is that being enacted?
That is not enacted yet, but that's a proposed legislation that's been going up. They would be released then out of the New York State prison system, out of the Monroe County Jail, most likely. And those are people that I think they're going to be incarcerated for 15 years or more and turn 55. It's kind of like a retirement system. You got to do so many years of service. Personally, I'm a little offended by that because I'm being 56. I think I still got some capability. I can hurt someone, with just this pen, right?
Like that,
see this pen in your eyeball. I think that would hurt. And I still got some stamina, but sometimes, and that's what you and I come from the same cloth. We're willing to sit down and talk to anybody. What's your objective with that, right? So if someone wanted to say, look, if they're 85 and feeble, and we want to get them out of prison, would be willing to have a conversation about how we can do that appropriately or whatever. But we got to think of the victim and the justice that was supposed to be served. But there's no one that could tell me 55 people are not dangerous. So please don't say it's dangerous or not dangerous.
Right.
Right. Because I'm 56 and I hope I can defend myself if I had to.
Yeah, that's huge. The fact that we have not had the conversation and we're so quick to, it seems as if the outcomes that we're looking for is not based on the actions that we're putting it forth. Like if we're talking about keeping people free from COVID, I would think the last thing you want to do is put them into the public because that's who was getting COVID. It didn't seem like people in jail were getting it. But when you talked before about, appeasing both sides, progressives and your, more conservative sides, we have a lot of push from the progressive sides about defunding police. You're as a police officer, person with a badge. How do you feel about that? What is something that you can see as being something where you can appease both sides in this particular argument?
It's a great example. If people, stakeholders sat down on a table and had frank, open conversations, what's the objective, right? And then all the stakeholder groups, and then you always want to look at the end user, right? Who's going to implement this and what do they really need? And that's what we refuse to do sometimes. We dig in our foxholes, right? Right. We stand up for our principles no matter what. And we can't have serious conversations. Defunding the police, negative connotation, right? Everybody's offended by it. But the $160 million I'm going to spend next year of funds it's all taxpayer money. It's not my money. It's not the sheriff's money. Right. I'm spending your money. I'm spending my taxes, right? So if we want to look at that as that's a pool of money, and this is how we as a society decide to spend $160 million on Monroe County sheriffs for all the things we have to do. But if you want to look and say, why are cops going to bark and dog complaints? Right. Why are cops going to the 14-year-old kid refuses to go to school calls? Right. Why are we do this all the time with EMT calls, medical calls, where we triage the call, and sometimes we go and protect the EMT. Sometimes we get there before the EMT and cancel them. Sometimes we get there, stay a couple minutes, everything's stabilized, and we leave the EMT to do their job. Right. There's many ways we can do this, but when you start out with let's defund the police and do it by 50%, 50% of what? Based on what analysis, right? So if you want to sit down and look and say, we're going to build a program, here's the key part of it. Mm-hmm. You got to build the capacity of that program for someone taking that truancy call, right? Because someone's calling 911 and there's chaos going on in the house and someone expects someone to show up, right? And someone showing up is right. They called for service and they expect, we've created an environment addicted to 911 where you'll call it for any government need you have almost, and we'll show up. So I'm perfectly fine talking about offboarding some of these calls. Maybe 50%, if we study and analyze, maybe 50% of the mental health calls we don't need to go to. And then we build up the capacity of the other side of it. And if you want to take $100,000, $1 million out of my budget because you stopped those calls coming to me and you gave it to someone else because you've already built up the capacity, I'm not offended by that. It's not my money. Right. I really don't care. And I can tell you half my cops don't want to go to that mental health call. I can guarantee they don't want to go to the bark and dog call, and I can guarantee they don't want to tell 14-year-old kid you're going to need to go to school. I think it should be a counselor or a truancy officer from the school district showing up to do that. But that's math. It's not offensive, but people want to do it because they don't like cops nowadays. Let's just defund them 50%. 50% of what? If someone's calling for a service, you better have the capacity built first. And you need safety in those calls, some of those calls, right? But there's definitely a way to do that, and I know I took hundreds of thousands of calls for service, and there's some I just didn't want to go to, and I'd be perfectly fine offboard those another government entity. I bet to go to those, so it's silly that people want to sit down and scream at each other. I'm like, it's not my money in the first place. Right.
Well, it's a problem that we can't sit at a table and have this discussion, and that's really sad because I see it so many times on my end where I'm very blatant about it. Look, I'm pro law enforcement. That's just how it is. Right. But I'm not against, reimagining police by any means, because I talk to police officers and they say the exact same thing. Yeah. I don't want to show up to those calls. I don't want to show up to a neighbor who, hates that their neighbor does, fires in their fire pit and the smoke goes into their house. Like, I don't want to show up to that. Or the dog is loose in their front yard. These aren't calls that I need to show up. It's not a 911 call. You're absolutely right. And I absolutely agree to that. But
you better have enough cops to go to those other calls. Right. And you got to take science into that. It's measurable. It's the number of calls for service, the types of calls that we're going to, the geographical area we have to cover. If we're dispersed over a large area like the sheriff's office, it's science, it's math. And we can have these conversations. But
have you found that there's people on that progressive side, the defunding police side, that have at least been able to sit down and have a mature conversation about these topics? Because I feel like having not seen that personally. So have you seen on your end that you've been able to sit down with somebody and say, let's come to some kind of agreement? Or does it seem like it's everyone's staunch in their support on this and everyone on here is staunch in their support on that, and it's just like butting heads every day?
Yeah, last year was a very emotional year.
Yeah,
right? Decisions were made bad, and rhetoric was being talked about out of emotion, and
right.
and maybe rightfully so for some of it, right? So all right, we got that part of the conversation. But the reason I'm late to your podcast is because I was with a senator, and we were having a great conversation. And at the end, we didn't agree on everything, you know, on bail reform or criminal justice reform, but we did agree a lot on prevention stuff that we can do. We did agree a lot on the recovery. We talked about the Star Academy, you know, for almost 45 minutes.
Fantastic.
Right. And with a pretty progressive person. So you can have those conversations. And I said the exact same thing there as I said to you, you know, if you're going to turn one off, when you talk about refunding, defunding, you better build the capacity the other side of it first.
Right.
You can't turn one off and then just
right.
leave a void, because again, people are calling for that 14-year-old. And that 14-year-old not going to school is not just because Johnny's being lazy that day, right? There's so many other things going on in that household that finally precipitated to a 911 call.
Right.
Right. That's just the ice, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back. What else is going on there? So again, that house needs service. So you can't just say no one's going to respond. Build up the capacity of the truancy officer with a lot of social services behind it, and then transfer that call to another entity. And if we do enough of that, I'll reduce my budget by that number. I'm not going to lay cops off through attrition. I'll get rid of the, you know, we got to go from 300 road deputies to 200, you know, 70 road deputies.
30 will retire at some point.
Yeah, it's going to retire. You don't even have to lay anybody off. There's no negative here. I just got to be able to make sure I can get a cop from Hamlin to Mendon in a response time that the community, you know, respects and needs, right?
I just think it's funny because I've had a conversation. I've sat down with one person and it seemed like I was just knocking my head against the wall. Yeah. I'll be completely honest. Because it was, okay, so who's going to take the place of this road patrol that you're saying that, you know, police officers shouldn't be able to pull people over for mundane issues? Right. Mundane. I wouldn't, that's not my word. You know, I think that someone not having the proper equipment is not mundane, or riding on ATVs, dirt bikes, which we all know I'm against. Yeah. You know, and well, it should be people, you know, from the community who are like more civil servants. Okay. So civil servants. Gotcha. Now, how do we know that they're going to defend a greater public and not, you know, help their friends out? Oh, we'll make sure that they're sworn to protect and, you know, serve their people. I'm like, so civil servants who are sworn to protect and serve. And I couldn't get her to grasp what she was saying. I'm like, you're literally saying police officers, but you're saying it's a different word. Now it's not police officers. It's something else. So what really makes you feel better is that they're not police officers, or they're not wearing a badge, or they're not wearing a gun, maybe. Right. Which is fine, but let's have the conversation and be upfront that, you know, you want someone that's showing up to these calls or who are pulling people over who don't have guns. Fine. We'll have the conversation, but we need to be honest with each other about what we want. And it just seems like it's kind of like like you said, the rhetoric is there. You know, people want something, but they're more emotional about it rather than coming to a conclusion of what it is that the end game really is about.
Here's what emotion gets you. And let's sit down and have those conversations, because, you know, traffic enforcement, let's just use that for, you know, pretext stops. Well, you're just pulling people over for the one headlighter because you're really interested in the gun in the car.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably because they know that car.
But let's be honest. You know, there's some kind of cause that we're looking at that car, right? And then I watch it leave the drug house and fail the signal to turn.
Right.
And this is a personal story I'm telling. And I pull it over on Lake Avenue, and the passenger gets out and he's running down the street, Lake Avenue, with a gun. I wrestle him over the gun.
Nothing bad happens on Lake Avenue, Sheriff Baxter.
But this is a story 30 years ago, but that was a pretext stop. I went to that house because it was a drug house. I sat up in the bushes, watched it. I watched the guy go in and out in 30 seconds or less, right? Jump in the car, and I watched him fail the signal leaving the curb. 1163B of the vehicle and traffic law. It's called the pretext stop.
But if you have the conversation
off the street,
right
now, if you don't want that, that's okay. But let's literally talk about what we're talking about. Let's be honest and frank. But you know, but with that being said, all right, so let's look at vehicle and traffic from a different standpoint, right? I don't know if you've ever driven in a third world country. You're in Korea.
I have.
Right? I go to Haiti every year. I've been to Korea. I've been to, you know, it's some tough driving conditions. And I'm still amazed people in America stop at stop signs. I'm still amazed. They might not stop all the way, but at least they slow down and don't kill anybody, right? I'm still amazed that people wait for the 30-second red light when no one else is around. That's what vehicle and traffic enforcement gets you. Right? That's what vehicle and traffic enforcement gets. So if you want that, you know, there's a reason why. I'll ask you an incriminating question. If you're driving down the thruway between here and Albany, what's your go-to speed? What are we going to?
It's 10 over.
All right, so you're doing 10 over, right? But you're doing 10.
Sorry, it's 9 over.
Because you believe underneath our traffic enforcement rules, right? That's the reasonable effort you can get away with.
Right.
We don't force everybody to go to 65 in law enforcement. Right. with our enforcement and our education and our presence, we force people to go 75. Right? You see what I'm saying? We don't force people to do the letter of law. We keep a lid on it and control norms and values and consistencies that we want as a public. Right. And that's kind of what law enforcement doing. They kind of keep us going inside the rules of the road, not that the letter of the law. Right. So again, you can even have conversations on that. If you can maintain that road safety and those norms that we've all accepted, the letter of law is 65 on the throughway,
right?
But we've all kind of accepted a 70, 73, 74, which is still kind of safe. Right.
Yeah. My attorney Chad Homo says I should have pled the fifth on that one.
He's downstairs, isn't he? Yeah. He's probably pulling the plug right now on the show.
Don't say that. Don't say that. I'm an honest guy. Sorry, Chad.
So am I. And there's a letter of the law, there's a spirit of the law, right? And we try and keep somewhere in that spirit. We don't want to go out and arrest every African American kid and put $300,000 of tickets on them. And I don't want bail. I mean, I can get rid of the cash right now. I'm good with it. We shouldn't have holding young kids in jail that they didn't have $50 yet. Another kid has $50. That's not appropriate. But now there are potential threats that we should talk about too. That, is this guy wanted? He's drunk off his butt. He's in the backseat of my car, and all he did today is slap his wife in the face. But he says, "I'm killing her when I get out of the car." That's not even a crime in New York State. It's harassment so far, right? But I have no way to even approach a judge and say, "Can we detain this guy until he detoxes for 4 hours?" Right? Until the wife gets the will of domestic violence, gets a good security plan. Can I at least have an ability to detain him for it? We can't even have those conversations because we're all so in our foxholes and want to argue about.
What I heard actually recently, because I was talking with the chief of police about why is it that judges are letting people out who have been caught with illegal guns in their possession, have done prior incidences, which also included illegal guns. But the law that they say that for the judges, they say that it's not about are they going to commit it again, or are they a danger to society? Sorry, there's no danger to society anymore, or it never was. It's are they going to end up in front of me again? So while he has an illegal gun, or she, they didn't do anything dangerous, so we can't hold them to it. But to any reasonable human being, if you're doing something, if you've done something illegal in the past, like we had someone that was a rapist and was out on bail for murder charges and was found with a gun on his persons, and they had not a warrant for his arrest, but something of common intent. And then he runs away from police and they tackle him and turns into like this whole kerfluffle. Right.
Is that a word?
I just, if it's not, it's made up. These are things that as a normal, I hate saying normal, as a reasonable human being, you would say, keep that person in jail, because they're obviously going to do something harmful to somebody, whether someone may deserve it or not, doesn't matter. And it's not anyone that deserves it by any means, but it seems as though most of these shootings that's happening tend to be drug dealer on drug dealer, or gang on gang, people that are just against each other anyways. And that's terrible, absolutely terrible. But the only thing that actually catches the attention is when a stray bullet hits a young kid, and then it becomes a big ordeal. And then they try and find the reasons behind it, try and push for some kind of legislation for something. But it's never, you're right. I mean, our police officers know what cars belong to who, and they're keeping an eye on that person, and they're trying to find a way to pull them over. They are, so that they can see the illegal gun, so that they can hopefully arrest a person. But we had it in Rochester where that same person shot at the police officers, and the police officers had to, shoot, or they pulled the gun out. So police officer had to do something. I hope you're never in that situation. Have you ever been in that situation where you had to pull your gun?
No, I've wrestled guns away from people multiple times. Literally wrestling guns. I've been shot at. People talk about armored vehicles, how bad they are. I had a bullet strike the armored vehicle that I was driving 18 inches away from my nose. I mean, it would have penetrated my face. So yeah, I've been there. I've wrestled many guns away from people, and never shot anyway. That's another statistic we don't talk about. But going back to your kind of where you're going with this is, we can have reasonable conversations. We can stop talking about bail. We can stop talking about the size of the crime. Is it a violent crime or not a violent crime? Right. And burglary second.
How bad was it?
Yeah. Burglary second. Can we just look at every case is objective, right? Can we look at the individual objective? Can we look at the fact pattern objectively? And let's take the structural racism things out of her and let's measure those things. Let's hold us accountable. The system, cops, judges, right? The whole system, you know, you can measure those things with transparency, but let's look at things objectively in the individual basis. Cause I'll use a harassment, not a crime in New York State, slap across the face, but that domestic incident's been building up for years. That guy's been keeping control of that checkbook for years. He's been intimidating that wife for years, right? Then he found out or thinks she's having an affair, right? And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Neighbors finally heard the lady get slapped. She's screaming and the cops get called. That might have been going on in that house for years.
Right. And
now he's intoxicated, raving, and he thinks she's having an affair, right? He's got total control of the money, got total control of the house. And I got about an hour, if not a little less, to get her secure. Her, not him. Get her secure, right? Get the kids with some clothes, right? Get her to Willow Domestic Violence Center. Try and find some cash because he's got total control of the checkbook, right? And I got about an hour as I do the paperwork before he gets his appearance ticket. In that objective, reasonable case, can I not present that fact pattern to a judge and say, Judge, I'm requesting you to detain this guy for 4 hours. Let him detox, right? Let's take alcohol out of the anger problem he's got right now, right? And give me a chance to get hurt, you know, or whether it's a shooter. You know, we got a guy that's been arrested twice in 1 month for handguns, young kid. We all know what's going to happen to that kid.
Yeah.
He's been arrested twice. Either he's going to be the statistic, right, of a homicide, or he's going to shoot someone else and ruin his life, ruin his family's life, and ruin someone else's life. Can we not hold that guy for 6 hours in the Monroe County Jail, detain him, and then the court system pops in the next morning and says, the public defender pops in, right? The local nonprofit flag pops in my jail and says, all right, John, second time with a gun, you can either stay in the Hooskow or you can agree to go to this area over here. And here's your nonprofit people that are going to work with you. Why are you carrying a gun?
Yeah.
Right. What's really going on in your household? We can dig deeper into these systems. It doesn't have to be just to detain people. But what is really with that individual person based on this objective fact pattern with him, and then measure it. Councilman, if we're only holding African-American males 18 years old and younger after this program, then hold us accountable for that. Right. But right now we've gone, you know, it's all or none. And we have one guy in Rochester last year. He was shot 4 times. He didn't shoot people 4 times. He was shot 4 times. Right. Is there any way to help this guy out? Right. I mean, you know, the likelihood of him being a homicide victim is great, or him getting his own gun to defend his own life for obvious reasons. And then
by any means necessary, he's going to find something. Of course,
Maslow 101, go back to that what we talked about, right? You know, so, you know, we can't even have these conversations. I'd sit down with anybody and say, look, let's we don't want to change it all back the way it was. Stop talking about bail reform. Take the word bail right out of it. Let's talk about, can we hold people, detain people pre-trial, right? Pre-conviction. I love the Constitution. I think it's on your wall behind me, right? Everybody loves the Constitution. You're not convicted, but there are some people that we know that are spiraling out of control, whether they're addicted to a drug or they get carrying guns twice in a month. Can we at least detain this person to set them up for success and living when they leave the walls of this jail?
Yeah, and that's something
that doesn't have to be forever.
That's something that came out recently, right? With the bringing in the federal agents, something locally that we're, you know, the federal holding them to a federal standard is able to keep them out of the environment that they're in and keep the people around them safe. That's what I believe. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, so that operation, one of the parts of that operation was to, if you will, fill the gap where criminal justice reform made us more vulnerable as a population. Right. And again, for the 100,000th time you heard Todd Baxter say it, we don't want to go back to where we were, right? We don't want, every cop in Monroe County, every chief of police said bail reform was needed, right? Criminal justice reform was needed. We all agree. But you take discovery, that was part of criminal justice reform, where we had to turn over the evidence to the other side, right? The defense. And discovery came out and said within 30 days you have to do that. It was an impossible task. Everybody realized it was an impossible task. Justice was not going to be served with a 30-day window. And the legislature extended certain cases out to 45 days. That was a small tweak to criminal justice reform that made everybody win. Even the defendant won because they got better evidence that they could use to acquit themselves, right? We got better state. So why can't we do the same thing with pre-trial, right? Pre-conviction detentions? Just have a small conversation with a small tweak for a public safety consideration. And you're absolutely right. There never was a public safety consideration. Right?
It's only in movies or something. Where do we hear that from?
So with that being said, let's put one in there. Let's throw the whole thing out and get rid of all pre-trial. Let's just go with public safety detentions or a chance of flee. The guy's wanted for homicide and we think he's going to flee. We got every indicator he's going to flee. He's got an airplane ticket in his pocket. Then maybe we detain him but let judges do that and then have a system that holds us accountable if people are abusing the system, Again, they're not difficult conversations to have. I was going to give you one example if you don't mind. We got time?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good.
For you got all the time.
The safe law, right? Safe legislation that came out, right? After horrific school shooting, after school shooting, after school shooting.
Right.
And we came out with this safe law. Again, never talk to the end users. What do you as law enforcement need to do to keep your local schools safe from the next shooter, right? What do you as school officials need to keep your school safe, right, for the next school shooter coming to your school? What do you need as local, groups that work with young adolescents, like a Villa of Hope, right? That works with adolescents going through a lot of trauma in their life, right? What do you guys need to keep the next school shooter from going inside the school? None of us got talked to. So we came out with this safe legislation that talked about pistol grips on a rifle, talked about bayonet lugs on a rifle, talked about muzzle flashes, and then we all got in our foxholes and we argued about it.
Yeah.
That sucks. That's great. That sucks. That's great. That's right. Now, one of those things is going to save a person's life in the next school shooting. We talked about 10-round magazines. The criminal we all know doesn't care about the 10-round magazine. He's going into a school to assassinate kindergarten kids.
Right.
He's not thinking. Now, with the less capacity magazines, make it more difficult for him to do multiple shots? Of course, yeah, but it doesn't mean he can't go out and steal 30-round magazines or manufacture them
himself. It's not hard to get a large round magazine anywhere else.
So the only point I'm making is, and for now almost a decade, we've been arguing about nothing.
Right.
Literally nothing. We've been arguing about bayonet lugs and flash suppressor. If you don't know what a gun is,
if you don't know what
the metallic parts on the gun have nothing to do with the bullet.
Nothing to do with
3,000 feet per second. Right? It doesn't affect the bullet once. A pistol grip affects the bullet 0. And doesn't stop the shooter from going into the school. But that's what we got out of it. And we called it safe legislation.
And we have a gun-free zones. Yeah. That's supposed to keep people from.
Now, if we want to talk about how do we intervene with a threat assessment program into these people that we see spiraling out of control, and we intervene holistically in their lives. Right. We get them on a path of success as opposed to a path of anger.
Right. The teachers that see them every single day.
Yeah. And the counselors, and we want to put more money in that. That would prevent maybe the next school shooting. You want to look at Parkland as a case study and look at mental health, law enforcement, the school district, all knew this kid and all worked with that kid.
Right.
All of them were doing their job with that kid. FBI dropped the ball. Sorry, FBI friends, dropped the ball a little on that case from the standpoint they had warnings. And they didn't put the 2 and 2 together in the warnings, but we all kind of did our job pretty good. And he still killed all them kids inside that school, right? All right, what are we really doing safe legislation? What are we doing to make sure those 3 things are connected together?
Right.
Break down the FERPA and HIPAA laws, break down the silos and egos, and build systems from a state level, right? That can have those entities talking to each other to holistically get in that kid's life. That's safe legislation.
And this is a sheriff that's talking about, the very basics of helping a human being. And when we talk about these types of legislation, I'm always about the hamburger method. You need the bottom bun and you need the top bun, unless you're gluten free, I guess. But you need both. You need the law enforcement. That's the top bun to keep people from going too high, going too much, going too far. And you need the investments in social programs.
Absolutely.
And that's what holds the entire burger together. And I'm all for it. I'm just not all for these people over here who are. They won't talk about anything else but this, and they won't agree with anything else but this. If you don't agree to these standards over here, then we have nothing to talk about. Right. And I don't agree with that. There's a politically correcting way of doing things, and holler right there. There's a way to do it where we meet somewhere, right? Where we meet somewhere in the middle, and we can come back to being Americans as opposed to red and blue or Republican, Democrat, or whatever all these stigmas are. It's really just comes down to humans being humans, and there's going to be humans that do bad things always and forever. There will always be suffering. There will always be anger. There will always be malice. I mean, we're talking about the firstborn children of Adam and Eve. This has been here forever, and it always will be. But how do we mitigate it? We can do what we can with the social programs, and we can do it again with our police enforcement, law enforcement. So I appreciate you coming on my show. I appreciate you having a voice out here, and I'm sure we'll have many more people that will come up and say that we need to have you on again. And it was fantastic. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an honor. And thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Go out. Do you have a website or anything that they should go to? Or
so for all our everything we do in the sheriff's office is on our social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can check those out. They're pretty easy to get to. And then our website at monocountysheriffs.gov. All our services. Listen, people suffering opioids. I just want to plug that real quick. The numbers are not slowing down.
Nope.
The numbers are actually increasing a little bit on us. The number of deaths, in fact, we do tons of work. I have one deputy. His sole job is to help people out in the addictive state. He works with every overdose in Monroe County. He's at the house the next day working with that overdose victim if they survived and the family. we'll drive you to Pennsylvania to get you an inpatient bed if that's what we have to do. We know everybody in Monroe County.
Yeah.
So if you are suffering or anybody else is suffering in your family, please do not hesitate. Even if you live in another jurisdiction, call us. We'll hook you up.
Nice. That's fantastic. What's the number that they should call for that?
So you can simply call the 911 anywhere in Monroe County. We make it this simple. Call 911, say, I'd like to talk to a deputy about an overdose or about a heroin. We will send a deputy anywhere. If you got opioids in your house and you want them picked up, call 911. The sheriff's department will go anywhere in any jurisdiction. Every police department in Monroe County has drop-off boxes at their police department, Irondequoit, Greece, City of Rochester. So there's lots of ways, but even if you can't get them out of your house, you can't drive anymore and you got 80, 90 prescription pills in your house, call us. We'll come take those out so someone ain't burglarizing your house and taking those.
Without arresting them?
Absolutely. 100%.
All right. You heard that straight from the sheriff.
100%.
You will not get arrested if you call and say, hey, I need these drugs out of my house.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Prescription opiates. I should
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
You call it tequila. We're locking you up.
There you go. Let's put the asterisk on the end of that one. I appreciate it again. And anyone out there that knows the contact info for Kanye West and John Leguizamo, I'm still trying to get them on the show. I left voicemails for both of them. Austin, play that funky music, please.